Great, our tax dollars at work.
All right. So, welcome to the Town of Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for July the 16th, 2024. Call to order, please.
Bill Marin,
Yo.
Kyle Oberketter,
Here.
Eric Bozek,
Here.
Rob Levitt. Yes. Cindy Hirschfield. Here. Katie Hostetler. Here. Jack Horvath.
Here.
Bob Kaplan.
Here.
Ben Firestone.
Here.
Excellent. You have a quorum.
Excellent. The first item is to approve minutes from June 4th of 2024. Do we have any corrections, suggestions, or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a first? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I abstain.
I abstain as well. But it looked like it approved.
Still approved. Thank you very much.
Great.
Just a minute, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 3 abstains.
Yes. Great. The next item then is a public hearing on 298 Park Avenue, special review, a minor PUD amendment. So Kevin, if you want to come up to the stand, you can. Should I leave this to staff, to Kevin?
Yeah, let me please share my screen here, just a quick second. Okay. This is a public hearing on an application submitted by Stutzman Tri-Alliance, represented by Kevin Michelson, who is here this evening. And it's a request for special review, minor PUD amendment, site plan amendment, as well as a mixed-use parking reduction to convert three-bedroom approved units in the 298 Park Avenue property to 6 one-bedroom dwelling units. And this is in the Basalt Industrial Park PUD. And you can see it here. This is the location of the site. It's on Park Avenue off of Willets Lane in the Basalt Industrial Park. As background, the applicant received approval for three-bedroom market rate units and 3 deed-restricted Category 3 units that were one-bedroom units. And that was approved in 2013. The land use approvals from 2013 legalized the 3 category units that were approved, and then they provided for the ability to construct 3 bedroom units that were market rate units. And the site currently has 2 buildings on it. It has a building A, which the 3 bedroom units were approved on the upper floor. And then there's a building B that included the 3 category 1 bedroom units that were actually built. Only one of the 3 free market units was built out. The buildings are mixed use. They have industrial uses on the first floor. And then, as I noted, building A currently just has the 1 3-bedroom unit. And then building B has industrial uses on the first floor, and then 3 deed-restricted units on the upper floor and 2 small office spaces as well on the second floor. The review process for these actions is a Planning and Zoning Commission review to make a recommendation to Town Council on all the requests. And there are public hearings at both the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council level. So once again, the request is to convert the 3 3-bedroom market rate units that were approved into 6 one-bedroom units. And as I noted, only one of the market rate units from the 2013 approvals was actually built at this point. They're also requesting a mixed-use parking reduction to reduce the number of off-street parking spaces that would be required from 30 spaces to 23, as well as a PUD amendment to vary the side yard setback on the property to accommodate an elevator. An elevator is needed to be added to Building A in order to meet the accessibility requirements. And so the applicant has proposed to put it on the south side of the building in this location, as you can see here. The elevator would encroach into the current side yard setback by up to 6 inches. But because it's a PUD, you can amend the setbacks. In reviewing the application, staff has identified a series of discussion items that are outlined in your packet. The first being compliance with the master plan. Staff has identified several goals and objectives of the master plan in your staff memo that could be applicable. Generally, staff thinks that the smaller market rate units that are proposed will likely be more attainable than the 3 3-bedroom market rate units that were approved in 2013. Other topics included the community housing mitigation requirements. In 2013, the applicant was required to provide the 3 1-bedroom deed-restricted Category 3 units. Because the town code still requires the 20% of the units and 25% of the floor area be affordable, the proposed program of the 6 1-bedroom market rate units still would be mitigated for sufficiently by the 3 1-bedroom category units. However, because the town code has been amended since 2013 to change the level of category requirement, and it's lowered the category mitigation requirement, there's a provision in the draft conditions that would require the applicant to change the category of the category units and drop it from a Category 3 to a Category 2. In this provision, we've included that the existing tenants could stay under the Category 3 until they vacate the units. And so this would avoid the requirement to displace those tenants by reducing the category. But the reduction in the category would be consistent with the current town code provisions. Other discussion items that came up in the review, compatibility of the residential units with the industrial zone district. The restrictions in the 2013 approvals provided limitations on the industrial uses that could be allowed on the site. You see that here in the draft conditions. To ensure the compatibility of the industrial uses with the residential units. And so staff is not proposing to change those in the conditions. There was also a condition in the 2013 approvals that required language be included in purchase documents as well as leases, identifying that property owners that are either purchasing or leasing property in the residential units acknowledge the industrial uses on the site. This is a similar requirement that we've required of other residential situations where industrial zone districts. Other topics also included the elevator, as I noted. They're proposing to amend the PUD to allow for the elevator to go slightly into the setback. And staff is supportive of that. We think it's the best location for the elevator. And then that brings us to the mixed-use parking reduction. As I noted, because they have a mix of uses on the site, with the proposed 6 residential units, that would require a total of 30 off-street parking spaces. And they're proposing to reduce that down to 23 with the mixed-use parking reduction. The town code allows for a reduction to be granted up to 25%. The premise behind the reduction would be that the commercial industrial uses use most of the parking during the day, and then on the off business hours, the spaces would be available to the residential. They've had a report done that's in their application by FHU out of Denver that analyzes the parking. Their observations are that between 10 and 11 off-street spaces are typically taken up by the current uses. And staff has had multiple visits out there to look at the property, and we've observed a similar parking rate with the existing uses of 10 to 11 spaces being taken up. So staff generally believes that there's capacity for the proposed conversion from 3 3-bedrooms to 6 1-bedrooms. Staff and the applicant have also worked with the fire district. The fire district had some initial concerns about the location of the parking spaces, but they've adjusted the parking plan that's on page 143 of your packet materials. And now the fire district is accepting of the circulation, the way the parking plan is laid out. Other topics that came up during the review is the school land dedication and parkland dedication fees would be required. Also, in terms of the sustainable building regulations, there's a draft condition that would require them to apply to the extent applicable to adding the additional units. In total, staff would recommend this evening taking applicant comments, taking public comments because it's a public hearing, and then also asking questions of staff and the applicant. And then after P&Z discussion, if you're comfortable, you could make a motion to recommend approval to the town council. We do have Kevin Michelson here this evening representing the applicant group. Kevin, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
I just want to thank y'all for having us here, and thanks for the presentation, James. Everything he said is accurate. The 2 units that are unfinished right now, we're looking to finish that, and we agree that the 1-bedroom units are more attainable for the area and more appropriate for this particular development, and so that's why we're here today, to kind of change the approval. The only other comment that we have is the condition to change the category of the affordable housing from category 3 to category 2. We'd like to keep those units as category 3 units. And that's all.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Kevin. At this point, we'll open it up for any commissioner questions for the applicant or for staff. Phil?
Sure, I do have some questions, and this is actually for staff. I wanted to know, and this has come up before for other projects in this area, residential projects. Is it possible to get a pedestrian cut through to the original road bus stop through Willets Bend and the town? Because when this happened before, the town didn't own the property on the other side. That was like the drilling company.
Right.
And now the town owns that property on the other side. I know that Willets Bend isn't in the town, but if there's a way to weave a pedestrian cut through to get to the bus stop, otherwise you have to walk way around on both sides.
Do you want to answer this, or you want me to take a stab at it, Michelle?
Well, we've been working with posts and the HOAs in that area to look at the viability of that, and there's less than no support for doing that right now.
Yeah, because I brought this up last time this project came through in 2013, and we got the same answer. And actually, it was a different answer. The other answer was that the town didn't own the property, so it was impossible. Now the town owns the property, so it is possible. So if the question remains, if there's no support, who is there no support from?
Well, it's actually not technically possible currently without gaining easements. to go from Willets Lane to through the Willets Bend property, and either that or go on the adjacent Oak Grove Townhomes property. And we've met with both the HOAs in the last 2 years here, trying to get a cut through and get an easement on those properties.
So you need some leverage to do this.
Yeah,
And there is none.
We don't have any, so.
That's a better answer.
But we've been trying. There was also an approval some years back on the, it's the Skico warehouse property. It wasn't owned by Skico at the time, but they received an approval for a project there, and it had a cut through as part of it, but they never built the project, unfortunately, so.
Is there a way that we can just sort of keep that particular issue on the radar? Because eventually something will happen where
Yeah.
you do have leverage to do that at some place.
We can definitely talk about that as part of the Willis Lane connectivity.
Yeah, okay, good. And my other question is, there is an allusion in here to, not illusion, but an allusion in the memo to expanded public transit. Is there any possibility of expanded public transit? We've been looking at over the last few years, a lot of affordable housing and residential projects through there. And is there any way to expand that or consider expanding that? Because a lot of it hasn't been built out, like the.
I guess I would throw that also in the category of the Willis Lane connectivity plan, where we're trying to do more like infrastructure, potentially more recycle stations. You've got Basalt connected services that area.
Yeah, I'm making a pitch for it not to fall through the cracks again. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Cool. Katie, any questions?
I guess just on the parking, and I may have missed this in the packet, but are there designated spots for people that are then shared, or everyone has their own spot?
The new plan has a designated spot for each unit,
Okay,
all on the back side of the property.
okay, cool.
And then the rest of the spaces would be kind of a shared use between
Got it.
guests and commercial.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. That's it.
Todd?
In the original approvals, did they have the ability to condominiumize the front building, or is that an additional request?
No, they did have the ability in the original approvals, yes.
Okay. What was the other? Does the putting in an elevator, the accessibility requirements are all extremely expensive? If the applicant decided they didn't want to do that, could they go back to the original plan and only build three bedrooms?
They could.
They don't lose that ability.
They would not lose that ability, yeah.
Okay.
They would have to make a decision before they recorded their approval documents, basically.
So once it is recorded, though, they then lose the ability.
Yeah.
All right. And then I guess to the applicant, would you want to provide further comment why you want to keep it category 3 than category 2 other than financial?
There's a number of reasons we've been discussing. One, we feel it's a little awkward to have a category 3 person next to a category 2 person during the transition period. And we feel like it's been category 3 for 10 years. The categories seem to have been changing their criteria. The code changed. The people that have been living here have been in category 3 since the building was built, and approved. So Sunny's pretty adamant that she would like to keep them as category 3, and sent me some texts this morning from the United Kingdom to make sure I put in the pitch for her.
do we have ability to, I guess, the staff to make a recommendation that building B could be condominiumized and sold under deed restriction?
Yes, you could make that recommendation. The code has the flexibility to allow for that. You know, the town has the ability to determine the mix of units in our housing mitigation section that are required for mitigation.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Cindy?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Who gets to bid on these units? I'm not sure if this is staff or applicant, but are there, is there a priority system if it goes to employees of the business first, et cetera, or is it open to anyone?
Well, the 6 units are market rate units, so there's no priority system. You know, the applicant has the ability to select the purchasers or renters if they choose to rent those units. In the category level units, they're currently required to meet the town's priority system that we have in the guidelines. And if they change the categories, they would still be required to meet that priority system, which is essential employees working in the town of Basalt, first priority, regular employees in the town of Basalt as second priority, essential workers between Aspen and Glenwood as third priority, and then just general employees meeting the income requirements between Aspen and Glenwood as the fourth.
Okay,
priority.
now, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. How many units are we talking about? I thought we were just talking about 6.
Well, there's 3 category units on the site that were approved in 2013.
The 3 bedroom.
No, 3 one-bedrooms.
Okay.
That were
In
built.
addition- Got it.
And then there were 3 three-bedroom units that were free market units that were approved, and they only built 1 of them.
Okay, so these 6 one-bedroom ones that we are being asked to approve would be free market.
Correct. So they would replace the 3
Okay.
bedroom free markets.
And then for staff, what would be the argument for bringing the deed restricted ones down to category 2?
The discussion would be that the town code changed between 2013 and today to reduce the category level for mitigation. So it went down from a category 3 to a category 2. And the applicant didn't build out all the free market units. They only built out 1 of the 3. And they're beyond the vesting period, so code changes should apply to a new amendment.
Okay.
That just for reference is consistent with building codes, for example. So when this project was approved, it was under a different building code and now it will be subject to 2021.
Okay.
And this is for the 2 category units that are adjacent, that are existing in building B?
There are 3 category units in building B, and they're all currently category 3,
And then the 2 other units
are office spaces.
are office spaces, okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong with respect to the code change, but it's asking for an average of 100% of the area median income. And the difference between category 2 and category 3 is between 100% and 101.
No, it's actually category 2, it's 100%.
I thought category 2 goes from 80% to 100%.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
maxes
category
out at
3 goes from 101%
To 120.
to 120. So, the one way of looking at it is I could have 3 category 3 tenants making 101% of the area median income, and we'd be 1% over the current code requirement. So we're not far, is one way of looking at it.
What are the income differences though? The actual, what is 120% versus 100% income?
I can tell you that.
Yeah, what is the area median income today?
So for a one-bedroom unit, the difference would be, category 3 would be 108,000 and category 2 would be 90,000. So, about
20%.
18,000 different.
Not at the 101%, but yeah.
Yeah, that's at the max. So,
Still opens the pool up.
yeah.
That's your
I'm
question?
done with my questions.
Is there someone currently living in the 3-bedroom that was built?
Yes.
And so they will be evicted and that will be turned into 2 1-bedroom units?
Yeah, probably when their lease runs out.
Okay.
When we begin construction and, it's all part of this process, and so that person would be notified and.
Okay, that's all.
Start this way and work our way back. Ben, questions?
Yeah, the parking, the parking spots that are noted on the parking plan, is spot number 23 and 22. There's 2 different parking plans that I see here on the application packet.
Well, we made some adjustments after it was submitted.
So there's the parking plan that's associated with the consultant's review of the parking, and there is this plan, and they are different. So which one is the one being approved?
This one,
This one, as,
that is on the screen now.
okay.
So this is the existing parking on the left, and then it's also the approved parking configuration from the 2013 approvals. And then on the right here is the proposed parking configuration.
Okay.
The fire district had some concerns with the current parking configuration and the 2013 approved parking configuration from a circulation standpoint. So, working with the fire district, adjusted a couple of the parking spaces to better work with the circulation.
So is parking spot number 23 designated for loading and unloading only, or is it a permanent space?
That's intended to be designated for loading and unloading only. It's immediately adjacent to the elevator there, so it kind of makes sense for the 6 units that are upstairs there to be able to, offload their groceries or move furniture, whatever the case may be.
But it does count towards one of the 23 spots.
It is counting towards one of the 23 spots, yes.
And the parking spaces that are designated as parking spaces specific for the tenants are the parking spots 1 through 6, essentially, or 15 through 9.
On the west side of the property there, all of those spots are designated for the 9, there's 5 and 6, so there's 11 designated spaces back there.
So it's these spaces back here on the west side.
And there are no existing changes to drainage within this?
No, it's all mostly asphalt, and the dashed lines are kind of trenches to current drainage now, and it all runs well. It drains well.
No further questions.
Yeah, question, and I may have missed it. The downstairs is a for rent product or for sale product, the industrial?
They're rented. They're all rented.
Okay, and so there's a mechanism, I guess, my questioning goes towards the safety of the tenants or the owners upstairs. Is there a surveillance mechanism or mechanism to make sure that the uses are continuing to be the proper uses to protect the people upstairs?
Oh, yeah, there's a manager on site that knows exactly what's going on. And Sunny owns a couple of other lots right nearby, including the storage facility right next door. And so they're well aware of all the tenants' activities, and everybody knows Sunny, and they all know each other as well. They watch out for each other. Like, I don't know if staff got questioned by any of the tenants, but who are you? What are you doing here? You know, I was asked a couple times when I was on site.
Okay, that's a concern. No further questions.
On that line, is the manager on site a property manager for the project?
Is he on site, living on site?
Correct.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. James, is the parking on the street required, the overflow parking?
It's not required by the code. However, it exists. Basically, the parking requirements for Park Avenue are that if you have the gravel shoulder, as long as you're not parked on the asphalt, it's 72-hour parking.
And so we're not going to make them upgrade that to asphalt?
No, we probably wouldn't want them to, yeah.
Has Bach been consulted on the change?
Bach has not been consulted, no.
I found that strange. Will they come into the loop before it gets to council?
That wasn't the plan. I mean, generally, it's the town code to go with category
Well, I just
2.
remember us sitting here and talking about we need 3-bedroom units for families. And we got three-bedroom units, and all of a sudden we're getting rid of them, and it's not an ideal place for children. It's an industrial park, but it's 2 3-bedroom units that we thought we desperately needed, and now we're just letting that go. It seems like that's their purview, that they should be in that conversation.
I guess the response to that is they're not deed restricted units, so that's why Bach didn't.
Rob, I want to make an aside on that, because I've been doing affordable housing for a long time. All the studies of demographics say that it's mostly families that are here, but when affordable housing is built, up valley or down valley, the 1-bedrooms and studios are the ones that go first. Those are easy to fill. The 3-bedrooms are always hard to fill, even though the demographic studies say the opposite.
Well, I think we talk about housing later on tonight, and
Yeah.
this will come up again.
It will come up again, yeah.
I just remember fighting for 3 bedrooms, and all of a sudden we're getting rid of them. I thought that was strange, especially without Bach weighing in.
But this is a conversation that happens in affordable housing discussions for the last 10
We
years.
can have that later.
Probably again tonight. I have no problem with the elevator being off over the boundary. The green building requirements, you sort of glossed over that. Again, we spent a lot of time implementing these things, and it's an opportunity to bring a building up to where we'd like them to be.
Sure.
What's going to be the threshold there?
Well, because the remodel is pretty minimal, you're simply taking kind of a core and shell space and finishing it off. A lot of the SBR requirements don't get triggered. So staff has proposed the condition to the extent we can require them on the scope that's proposed. We will.
I mean, you'd be coming in at insulation, really, and everything thereafter.
Yeah,
And is that what we're asking for?
yeah,
Okay,
generally.
great.
I mean,
It won't be minimal.
the
Right, it won't.
exterior.
The building
and
codes will
I
kick
understand, right,
in.
and all the site work stuff, that's done, no problem, but
Yeah.
we're coming at a time where you can still make a difference.
Yeah,
Just hoping we are.
sure.
That's it, thanks.
Following up on that and the point you raised, what were the vesting rights and have they expired? Is there anything that applies at this point? Obviously, we're trying to tweak the requirements on the affordable housing aspect of it.
Yeah, the vested rights were 3 years at the time, which was 2013, so they did expire. However, the vested rights continue unless there are code changes, and so there have been code changes to the category that's required. The mitigation rates are still the same, so that's really the one change that is affected by losing the vested rights.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask one more quick question of staff?
please.
Sorry. What are the fees on a project like this, roughly?
Well, you're gonna have parkland dedication fees of about 10,000 per unit.
Per unit.
Yeah, and then school and dedication are gonna be 4,500, somewhere in there per unit. And that's kind of a pass-through. We collect it as the town, but it goes to the school district. You're going to have building permit fees, which is based on valuation. There are going to be water tap fees for the units that haven't already paid them through Mid-Valley Metro. And I think they're running about 7,000 a tap, somewhere in there. So fairly substantial.
Just curious.
Great. As this is supposed to be a public hearing, we'll open this up for public comments at 6:39. Doing the whole online thing, James?
We are. It does not look like we have any attendees, but if you would like to provide comments virtually to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you can go on the packet that's on the town's webpage under the Agendas and Minutes tab and go to the July 16th Planning and Zoning Commission packet, and there are instructions on logging in and providing comments. We'll take maybe a minute here to see if anybody's going to log in.
Or if anybody walks through the door.
I guess while we're waiting, I have a follow-up question. If we choose to change the category of the existing units, does that go into effect when someone chooses to move out or their lease is up?
Would be when they vacate the unit, so, they could renew their lease at the Category 3 level.
Thank you.
As no one's come through the door and no one's logged online, we will close the public hearing at 6:40. We will now open it up for commissioner comments and discussion. We'll go the opposite direction. Rob, you want to start us off?
I'm stuck on the Bach thing, because I just think they should be part of the conversation. Whether they support this wholeheartedly, I think they're, weigh in equally as much as we should.
We can also add that as part of our recommendation too, when it goes to council.
Yeah. So that's one thing I'm in on.
Yeah.
Parking fees, elevator, and green building. No, it's an odd place for larger units.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Agree
it
with
does
that.
make sense there. That's all I got.
Comments?
I like the project. It's good to see more units coming to market. It is a bit of an odd location, but it provides somebody the chance to own something that's affordable in this community, and we support that.
Not affordable. It's free market.
Free market.
I understand, but
Not for
it's
sale.
not affordable.
Rental.
Rental.
I thought it was a for sale product.
It is, but it's a free market.
It's a free market.
Deed restricted is only rental.
So it's
So that would
not,
be- that's
it's
my
not an ideal
question.
location, but it's more housing at a relatively lower price point because it's not in a Class A unit right in downtown or something. It's going to have a lower price point.
Attainable is a good word.
Attainable.
Don't go there with me.
It helps
part of
house
that
more
discussion.
people. It's good to see it put to work since it's been sitting up there vacant for so many years.
Ben, any comments?
I'm echoing the same that's just been said. I think that there is some uniqueness to that area that would hopefully hinder the market to keep it in line with the comps. But more housing is appropriate. So thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I would kind of echo all that and support the transition to smaller units. I mean, I think that's, like everyone's saying, it's an industrial place. There's not a lot of open space directly attached to that. There's no sidewalks in that neighborhood. It makes sense for maybe single, non-child households to live there. When it comes to the reduction of the category of the affordable units, I feel like they've been there for 10 plus years. They mitigated when they were built. We're accepting them as mitigation still. So it just seems like it's maybe it could be grandfathered in. So I think maybe have a conversation about that. That's all.
Do we want to pick up that conversation now, hear from everybody? Where are we at? As far as Mike's point of,
I'd love to maybe add a caveat to that, or like another thought process of, I don't know how people feel about ownership versus rental, but if the front can be condominiumized, why not make the back and allow those to be sold at deed restriction? And if they want to keep renting them, make it category 2, but if it could be sold and they want to go through that work, it can be sold at category 3 levels. There's a little bit of both sides there, but I know that adds complexity, but
What's the point of that?
home ownership versus rental, deed restriction.
But you're adding complexity. I don't see how that factors in whether it's Cat 2 or Cat 3.
Well, if you just want to hold them, you have to rent them at category 2.
Okay.
If you want to sell them, you could sell them at category 3 level.
Fine.
If we want to,
Make the additional profit?
I'm sorry?
Make the additional profit?
and if we want to,
Do we get some of it?
The town does for condominiumizing it, right?
no.
Just
There's no amendment fees or anything that would be associated with that? Minimal.
Minimum.
don't have to. You're right.
Just
Yeah, it's an idea.
rationale was.
My question is, what's the purpose of the 2 offices that are being rented out as offices? Are those
Nothing to do with us.
nothing to do with us?
It's already done, it's already approved, it's
Already
there.
approved, it's already done, okay.
I had a comment.
Yeah, no, I know we jumped ahead of you, I just,
Okay, yeah, going back in the order. Yeah, I think in general, I'm in favor of more smaller units in this area than larger. What's your sense of what these might sell for?
I don't really expect Sunny will sell them. I expect that she would rent them. So I couldn't answer your question.
Okay. That's it.
Kyle, any additional comments or?
I mean, I guess eventually I'll just put a motion forward if we don't want to really discuss it.
That's fair,
Shut down, get shut down.
fair enough. Katie?
I don't, I don't know a lot about the different categories, but another idea I had is oftentimes I feel like you maybe would move into a place in being category 2 and then bump to the category 3 level, which you would then be technically not eligible to live there. So that could be another way to look at it, I guess, is if someone does start at category 2 but then moves into category 3, could they be allowed to stay there? But again, I don't know if that's an option.
Once you, if you're in a rental unit, once you reapply and you're beyond.
However, the rents and the income categories, they increase or change over time with adjustments in AMI.
Yeah.
So that kind of
Accounts for it.
mitigates for that.
Yeah.
Bill?
Okay, I have some comments to make. As far as the categories are concerned, I'm always in favor of lower categories on rental units for affordable housing. But let's go down my list here. I was here for the first approval, and at that time, I was opposed to the individual use restrictions. And initially, they were restrictions against having families there. And I made a comment then that if I were a kid, I would have loved to grown up in an industrial park. I thought that would have been really fun, but that's just me. But I think, yeah, I know parents freak out, but parents, you know, I get crap for letting my kids ride the bus around here. You know, anyway, you know, my view on parenting is completely different than other people's, but I think that as much affordable housing with as little restriction on it as possible is still best for the community. So I still am opposed to the use restrictions then, and I am now. You know, I see no incompatibility with an industrial district and residential. But that's not really so much of our question right now. One thing that I would like to mention, and I'd like to consider this as a condition, that, and this is something I've proposed before, but in consideration of a parking reduction, I think it would be really great if we could get some owner contribution to something simple, some simple transit thing like bike racks at the bus stop. Not expensive, there aren't any, and you'd think there would be, but there aren't, especially at Original Road or Aspen Junction. It would be probably easier to get to Aspen Junction than it would be to Original Road because you have to go all the way around, even though it's closer in a straight line. So I'd like to put that up for consideration. And also, I would like to encourage the applicant, and this is something I ask on every affordable housing project, to, in a multifamily situation, to make one of the units a type A handicap unit. You know, I know it's not required of you to do it, but it would be a really great gesture to do so. Because in that they're not required, they almost never get built. A lot of they're required to be adaptable. They're all required to be type B units. So to make one a full A unit isn't a real construction change, other than you have to add some, you know, fixtures and fittings and that type of stuff. But it's not a super ton of money, but it would be good PR, I think.
Can I ask what's the normal threshold where that would be required?
I can't remember. I have to look it up every time, but it's like a certain number of units, and
10 or 12?
yeah, something like that. And then you got to make one of them a type A, but they all have to be type B now with the newest code. So it's not like you have to change the shape or design of the building. It's just, you know, breakaway cabinets and grab bars and that type of thing.
Wider doorways?
No, if it's type B, it's adaptable, meaning they have to be like that. So you don't have to do that part. That part's already required. And it's not a huge lift, but it's good for the community. That's my comments.
Cool. I don't have a problem with the project. I think it was actually one of the first projects I voted on 10, 11 years ago. As a middle idea, I don't mind the idea of grandfathering in at Category 3 with the idea that new clients down the road are Category 2 is just a compromise in between kind of idea. That being said, do we want to proceed with a motion?
I want to clarify that. I thought that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's
the way
it's set up.
Okay.
So the current tenants as Category 3, as long as they're there, it's
as
still
they're
Category
there,
3.
Need to be part of a motion.
That doesn't even have to be part of the motion. Okay, great. So I like that idea then. Do we want to entertain a motion? Do you want to make a motion with your idea?
Bill, you want to make a motion?
I will make a motion. I'm gonna make the motion as written.
Without ADA?
Without,
Without ADA for parking?
Or the bike stuff?
Or the bike.
the bike stuff, I wasn't gonna require them to do it. I was encouraging them to do it. You know, I didn't want to say, you know, because we have no real grounds to do that. Yeah, she's shaking her head at me. No.
Don't say that now.
No, I've been doing this long enough to know we have no real grounds to do it. It was just like, if they feel like being, you know, doing the big thing, then great. But other than that, no. And the whole thing about the bike racks and stuff, that's a town decision. That's not something we should decide right here, but I do want that to become part of our ongoing discussion.
We could make it a recommendation, suggestion,
I would make it a comment.
comment?
Yeah, okay, then I'll make the motion with that as a comment.
And what about the ADA?
The ADA, it's in the comments. No, I can't make that as a recommendation.
Okay, and what about the cat change, we don't touch
I'm
the category?
agnostic about that. If
Okay.
someone wants to add that,
No, so we want it, I'm sorry, as it's written, it's gonna change from 3 to 2.
yeah, and I'm in
We don't
favor.
have to add that as a comment.
I'm
correct?
personally in
Okay.
favor of leaving it as it is. That's my personal opinion.
As it is now, or?
No, as it is,
As it's written.
as it is in the memo.
I agree, I'll second that motion.
Okay, good. Okay. Sorry
You want
about
to
the
take a roll
confusion.
call, or you want to just take a voice vote?
This is not a resolution, so we can take a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excellent. The next item on our agenda then is an update on the community housing study.
Sorry, these were not in the reverse order.
How do you feel about 1-bedroom versus 3-bedroom?
Well, you know what, while James is pulling up the presentation, we are gonna give you the highlights of the EPS study. I think you might have had the whole version in your packet. But out of the demographic data that was collected and analyzed, the overall picture of the trends is that town is aging.
Would you go back a second? Who did the study and who hired them?
Oh, yeah, that's important information, thanks. Economic Planning Systems completed this study for us,
Out of Denver?
out of Denver,
We hired them to do just this?
Do just
Bach or
this.
the town?
both, yeah.
Rob, these are the people who've been doing these studies for us for years.
I don't know if it's the same people.
Same people.
Same people.
We do it every 10 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. And for some background, you know, one of the reasons that this update came to light is in recent history, you guys were faced with some challenges with a land use application that came in and said, hey, there's a missing middle and your housing guidelines only go to category 3. Do we need more categories here? So that was one of many reasons why we went out and had the housing guidelines updated. Where we are now is that the guidelines have been drafted. They've gone to Bach twice for review with no major changes, and they also include some programs and policy recommendations for going forward. Without getting too bogged down in the stats and the demographics, generally our population in the valley as well, but a little interesting tidbit, Basalt particularly is aging the fastest. So we have that going on. I think we have 30% of our residents are 65 plus. So it's a really big percentage. We have the second biggest population is in the earlier 20s, but it's really evenly split basically once you get below that big 65 number. So just kind of a little interesting tidbit there. Incomes are also, they continue to be probably what you're guessing, just at both ends of the spectrum. A lot of our older population are retirees who are established and have developed wealth or moved here with wealth. We have the younger population does not have that wealth and has lower category incomes. So the summary basically out of that is that the recommendations for housing are across the board in all categories and all sizes, but specifically to there's a need for studios and 1-bedrooms. It came out big. There's a need for all size units. So, you know, I think everything we do, we're chopping away at those things. There's no one project that's going to solve any one of those numbers. So,
Just wanted to clarify one thing. the guideline amendments and code amendments have not been drafted. This is just kind of the study and the update to the assessment. And so we wanted to give you an update tonight on kind of what the recommended strategies were that came out of the EPS work. And, you know, if those strategies are ultimately adopted by the council, then we would work on drafting code amendments and amendments to the housing guidelines to be able to reflect, you know, those strategies. So just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Exactly, and those code amendments will come back to you.
Yeah.
So this is not your only bite at the apple, so to speak. So this is sort of like an introduction to where we are. And then I'll just add in my one other little tidbit here is throughout this whole process, we've been trying to schedule that meeting with West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition. It's not been, they haven't been available.
Okay.
So that'll come probably in August or September, as well as a meeting with Eagle County Housing Department, because they also have a robust program. And I wanted to make sure that their, whatever we adopt, our programs can be collaborative. So, because there's a lot of exciting things going there as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that I heard your synopsis, was this study done just for Basalt or the whole valley?
Just for Basalt.
Okay, so how do we know where we rank in terms of like the quickest or the most aging population? What's that compared to?
Oh, well, so when you do demographic information, the interesting thing for Basalt, because we're split between two different counties, is we have to do some averaging of the county information and the census blocks. So a lot of our, for instance, our job data is combined with job data out of Carbondale. So we have, if you look through the document, you'll see numbers for Aspen, Macon County, Eagle County, and all of the things. Although I will say one quick clarification on that. There's not a lot of comparison that says Eagle County because we can't separate out the Basalt aspect of Eagle County from all of the Vail Valley. So that's where you'll see that kind of thing. But it's a great question.
And so as clarification, you don't have the whole housing study. Town staff will send that to you. It's a significant document, but for your reference, what we've done in the slides that you have in your packet, we've boiled down their strategy recommendations. And so we'd like to just briefly kind of go through those and the reason behind the various strategies to give you an update, and then see if you have questions or thoughts on some of these.
One question here, just
Yeah.
following on with what Cindy said. This is the borders of town of Basalt, inclusive of Willits.
Yes.
Does this include the folks who have purchased the property that has not yet been developed as well?
You're talking about Jadwin?
I'm talking about, no, from the housing side, lots that have been purchased within Tree Farm that have not yet been developed, lots that have been purchased in South Side that have not been developed yet, but are under ownership. Are those owners counted towards this, or does a physical house have to be there?
So we wouldn't, so it's a little bit tricky with some of that data, right? Tree Farm, probably not. But I think you'll want to look at this study.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Because we're not degrees off, it's not like we're 5 degrees off. We are 1,000 degrees off from meeting our needs for housing. So I don't think that knowing whether it includes 10 lots over here or not is going to make a difference. We're never going to get to 100%.
Understood.
Not to.
No.
But those are good questions.
Yeah, I think the demand in the regional housing study that was done in 2019 left us over 1,000 units short. So, so the strategies that were recommended by EPS after their most current work with the town included, as Michelle alluded to, increasing the number of categories that we have in our housing guidelines. Currently, our categories go up to Category 3, and Category 3, the maximum income that's associated with the Category 3 is 120% of area median income. And so in doing their data collection and evaluation, they were seeing quite a bit of employment growth in the kind of 120 to 200% of AMI level, with the new medical professional jobs that are being created in the Willits area. And they also did see some additional employment growth actually in the 60% of AMI and below. So those were kind of the two areas that were increasing in recent years. However, the discussion was that the 60% of AMI and below is currently covered by our Category 1. So, you know, it's basically 80% of AMI and below. So they've recommended that we look at addressing the 120 to 200% of AMI that we're missing in our category levels. So they've suggested a new Category 4 that is 121% to 150% of AMI, and then a Category 5 at 151 to 200% of AMI.
And we just said AMI was 90,000?
Well, that's for one person. When you get more people in a household, that income goes up. So for a 4-person, the 100% of AMI was like 130 something.
It doesn't double. It's not like two individuals making 90 go to 180 and you still.
No, but it sounds like, I'm sorry, what number, you just said 130, James?
Yeah,
So
130.
if you- $260,000 a year at Cat 5 and they're getting assistance?
Yeah. And so,
Well, probably similar, maybe not 260, but still.
100%.
And when a single-family home is 1.4,
Right, it just does
It's a decent.
seem generous to be helping out those folks.
I'm
that's
saying
all.
it's not.
Well, if your interest payment is $9,000 a month,
Yeah.
like, you need help.
yeah.
I don't know the numbers, but it's.
But what's our, obviously the help is less at that level than lower, but somehow.
And so the conversation with Bach and EPS has kind of been that these are higher levels of incomes, but they're still not high enough to be able to afford a free market unit in the Mid-Valley.
So one of the findings was that the majority of housing that's been for sale in the last several years was only accessible to people making something like 350% AMI. Yeah, we all know it's expensive, but it was kind of astounding.
So some of their other strategies that they've recommended are developing a purchase of deed restriction program. You know, this is also known as a buy-down program in other jurisdictions. Bach has kind of wanted to move away from the terminology of buy-down and kind of more of a deed restriction creation program. Pickens County and Eagle County both have buy-down programs to an extent. Eagle County's is pretty extensive. There are also some other programs out there in the kind of Vail Valley that staff has been taking a look at and trying to see what we could kind of take out of those to establish a program like that. You really need a funding source to be able to do that. So we'll kind of talk about that in some of their later strategies here. But that was a recommendation that they're passing forward.
So, I'm sorry, Pickens County already has a program like that?
They're developing one. They're possibly developing one.
Okay, I was gonna say, I didn't know that they had one.
Eagle County's
I
got a
know about
more,
the Eagle County Ale one, but, okay, so they're considering it. Okay.
and West,
Makes sense.
Talking about it for years.
West Mountain Regional Housing Authority is starting their program as well.
Okay, yeah.
And then, so number 3 there is creating an ADU incentive program. And that would include potentially looking at code amendments to open up the ability to have ADUs in additional zone districts and more areas of town. This one would probably have to be kind of tied with kind of an outreach program to HOAs. Because we have a lot of HOAs in town that prohibit through their covenants ADUs. And so even if you open up the zoning, you're probably not going to get too many more ADUs unless we're able to work with HOAs to kind of change their covenants.
Well, there's also the PUD problem with that too.
Yeah, but you're still able to amend the PUDs if you get the HOAs to consent to it. Eagle County actually has a program where they incentivize ADUs in Eagle County with funding, but there have been property owners in Basalt that have tried to take advantage of that and have not been able to because our zoning wouldn't allow for it. So, it's a program that they're recommending we look at accepting. Other strategies that have come up included when we have proposed development in the urban growth boundary that's through an annexation process, look at getting more than our current mitigation requirements and kind of build on top of that with RO units.
James, you may remember the big flap about two master plans ago about the urban growth boundary
Yes.
and affordable housing business.
Yes.
That was my proposal, and it was in our plan and would not be ratified by the town council. You remember this?
I do, yes.
And that got really ugly. But I still maintain that we should have the flexibility to increase the UGB for affordable housing projects. Doesn't seem like that's a really, out there position, but it has a tendency to be very incendiary in this community. And it makes me really sad when, you're doing this for affordable housing. I'm going to step back from this for a minute. I've been doing this for a while now, and I've seen 3, maybe 4 reports like this. And usually when one comes out, very little happens other than we just tweak our affordable housing guidelines in the code for making other people to provide affordable housing. And that's caused me a lot of consternation over the years. We have done this, we've talked about this, we don't really do a lot when it really comes down to it. I, in various capacities, the public and private sectors, have had meetings with various unnamed town and city managers, planning directors, and mayors about these issues, where these reports have usually been referred to as aspirational in private. So I don't want to say that I don't expect much out of this, but I don't expect much out of this. We say all this, we talk about it, very, very little happens.
So just having a discussion. If you're done.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I've raised 4 kids here. Every one of them has wanted to come back and realize they have no flipping chance. And some of them make way more than I do. But the chance of them ever coming back to live here, it's like, it's fantasy, and they say it's a fantasy. So when I see stuff like this, it's like, that's nice. That's really nice that we understand this so well. But it would be really great if we could actually do something about it this time.
Yeah, I totally appreciate your skepticism because it's probably why the whole valley we've moved from having a housing problem to a housing crisis. And so Bach has really spent a lot of time going through some of these concepts already. We have a long way to go to filling them out and making them into reality. But for example, the deed restriction incentive program, we're probably, once this gets adopted, probably going to be able to enact that quickly in 2025, if not sooner.
Yeah. And for Basalt, Basalt does not have a very large budget. There's really not much we can do that involves money. But, things like, I'm looking at the recommendations here, and they're relying on things like LIHTC. I've done a bunch of LIHTC projects. We do not want that here. You have to kick out the crack smokers. It's really, it's not a joke. It's very bad. And that's really hard to do. And then once you do, you have to demolish the unit on the inside and rebuild it because it's extremely toxic. The Prop 123, there's not really a lot in there other than things we as a town don't want with the uncontrolled ADUs. So Prop 123 was one of the most disappointing state affordable housing things I've ever seen. Most of it is about making it easier to run affordable housing programs internally, to make sure that you can deal with, your internal stuff. Very little of it actually has to do with delivering units. Maybe it does in Denver, but it certainly doesn't here. So, and to rely on things like industrial zone units, this bums me out really badly.
I've been through a number of these studies as well, not as many as Bill, but a fair bit. I was coming out of City Market Day at 2 o'clock, and there were 10 cars in front of me trying to get out of the parking lot. I was backed up to where cars park. That's never happened before. I got to the roundabout, there were 12 cars. So we do the studies of housing. I would love to see us do a study on how many people we can take in the valley before we start building houses for everybody. I think there is a critical number, and it's the other side of the equation that we tend to overlook. And we have the money to pay for studies. We can't really do anything with that information, but we can pay for studies.
Which ties into the jobs reports and who's working where.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is most of these programs are not about building, they're about preserving the existing housing stock. So, this is the thought of doing ADUs is not because we think that there are these places where we're going to build 500, 100 units. Probably not. Most of town is really built out, and we're pretty much at capacity. So there's ways of maybe maintaining housing units as we have this population that's aging before those units get sold and turn into second homeowner units, preserving those and putting a deed restriction on them so that people in the future can come in and buy them. Same thing with the condos. Will it happen for every unit? Absolutely not. If we could get 10, 20, 30, that would be amazing. 30 units would be an increase by 10% in our overall deed restriction units in town. So these are little ways without doing construction or needing to get $50 million to do these insane projects to go. So that's where some of these things, although I totally agree, it's such an overwhelming problem, and it feels really overwhelming to, how are we even going to make a dent in this? I think for Basalt, it's unique and it's a little bit different than looking at what's going on in our neighboring communities. We're not going to build it all. We're going to figure out ways to preserve some of the existing units.
So has there been any look at completely changing some of the zoning? The only thing I see being built is single-family homes being sold for millions of dollars that aren't serving anyone working here. And so, that's what seems to be the development type that we continue to see. Is there an appetite to change it to, you can't build a single family home near the urban downtown and kind of spread that? So, and obviously that changes the characteristics of town like, is there any, I think Crested Butte did, they took a whole section of town and said, you cannot build a single family here, home here no longer. You have to build a duplex. And I don't know if they took it as far as saying like half it has to be deed restricted. But they're trying to let developers build it out with affordable housing and more units. And I mean, like you said, we're not going to build it out. The government
Most of the new
locally
stuff that we've seen was the ski co-housing at Willits, right?
Yeah.
Multifamily. Southside has multifamily, BCC multifamily, Black Mountain. So, I mean, you're gonna get, single families here and there, but I think the bigger.
Scottsdale's a mix.
But we've done a fair bit of density.
It's really actually kind of amazing when you compare us to other municipalities where basically all of the affordable housing in this town was created out of mitigation. It's pretty amazing. And so one of the things I think in one of the other recommendations is considering adjusting the mitigation rate as well.
Yeah. Some of the other recommendations were, as I was kind of discussing, through the annexation process, looking at getting more than our mitigation requirements. And luckily in the master plan, we've identified for certain properties the additional level of mitigation. But they're talking about actually doing a policy similar to what we had in the 2007 master plan that says you got to provide at least 50% deed restricted housing to annex. We didn't put that in the 2020 master plan. However, we were pretty property specific, like with the Jadwin property, by saying you need to get to a higher level in order to get the density you're looking for as an applicant.
How many properties that we've asked for more restriction have actually gotten built? Because I think that's the catch-22 is you drive, it still costs the builder the same, yet he can't make as much money anymore, and it never happens.
Yeah.
And none of it happens, and you get zero out of it.
That's
Have we ever looked at?
That's a hard question to answer. There are varying levels of more, I guess. On the River Park development, we required a good portion to have a primary resident restriction on it. But that was kind of all a negotiation that included the park purchase dedication. So that's not really necessarily apples to apples.
And you don't have to answer that now, but just it'd be interesting to see it, just making sure, you ask for more, but eventually it makes it unfeasible.
There will be a point.
What'd you say?
Has this been asked for more?
The BCC property? Yeah, they're beyond the mitigation requirements.
In the Lipkin Warner project for Lake Modern came in with more, significantly more.
I mean, I'm sure there's successes. I just wonder what's on the other side too. How many?
Stotts Mill.
25%.
I think there are.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
So
there
far.
was a bit more. There was also higher parkland requirements and community benefit requirements. And then, as Michelle was alluding to, they're suggesting considering increasing our regular inclusionary housing requirements. Currently, we require that 20% of the units and 25% of the residential square footage be deed restricted category housing. So they're suggesting we take a look at bumping that up. They're also doing an increase in our fee in lieu calculation. We haven't updated that since 2009, so it's definitely time to increase that. But obviously, we'd rather have dwelling units built for mitigation than taking cash in lieu, just because it's harder for the town to use that cash in lieu to create dwelling units than it is for somebody to build them for us. And then they've talked about a broader range of housing types. So as Michelle was saying, they've basically identified that we need the whole spectrum still of unit types. And then they've made some recommendations related to building a funding source. And so either a sales tax or property tax. Other communities are looking at that, so they've suggested we look at that. Real estate transfer assessments, we apply those whenever we can.
You can't skip over occupational privilege tax.
I'll come back.
Oh, don't skip that.
I'll come back.
Back to it. He's come back to that.
Okay, well, I like to tell the story on this one. The reason why we skipped over it is because James and I both cringed at it, to be honest. It's a Denver Front Range kind of thing. It is where employers pay a certain amount per employee in taxes. And so, to go to a housing fund. And so if it's $1 an employee a month or something else, part of our staff perspective on this is that, for example, our retail businesses in this end of town in particular, but really all of Basalt, are so seasonal. They have a big summer season, and the other seasons are sort of there. So even though we kind of went back and forth with EPS on this, saying, well, it might only be $50 a month, whatever. It's just a little bit hard to get behind when these people are already asking us to pay for their credit card fees, and that's 87 cents on your $10 charge or whatever it is. So adding this additional fee to them, it's not like we have a lot of corporations here.
That works in a city of 2 million people.
Right.
But in a city of 4,000 people, that's really a
Just gets
It
passed
seems
on. It
weird
just gets passed
also
on.
taxing the business owner who's like providing a service.
Yeah. So I think, the good news is it's good to have something on there so the other things look like they're maybe a little more reasonable. There's something to that. This is also not an exhaustive list. What it might spark is the conversation of, are lodging taxes going to the right places? Are there other taxes that should be redirected, or a percentage of those taxes to be redirected? There's just some other discussion there that these recommendations really are sort of like the entry point, and then things that there's really a lot of interest in, we'll have a part B and need to go do some more research and come back and say, well, here's a place where we have space for these things.
Was there any information on second home ownership within the town of Basalt?
So there was, I don't think we had stats. It's surprisingly low.
It's low.
I'm not saying it's high. I'm just curious, when you see things like property tax just affecting everyone who's already here,
Yeah.
Are we applicable to Aspen in that case?
There is a chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to extreme, but
To your point, one of my neighbors, someone was there for the first time in 3 years.
So Avon, I think it's
But-
Avon. Was that what Sarah sent us?
Yeah, I think so. There was a chart in the report. You'll see it. We're actually low in terms of second.
I believe it.
In terms of the valley.
I think it was less than 5%.
Is there anything on here that you guys found fascinating that we didn't already know?
That's a good question.
No, and I think really the thing that's probably more interesting is what programs and what creative things other municipalities are doing, because other areas, nobody has the money that Aspen has. So everybody's in the same boat of figuring out, how do we stop talking about this and actually do something? And so that, I think, is where it got a little more interesting. Like, what are some of the programs that might actually work for Basalt?
but
What would be the one that you found I guess we've talked about the deed restriction, the buy down program, or we've talked about ADUs before. I feel like you guys already know this information, or at least have started looking into it.
Yeah.
Did they provide things you didn't know already? I mean, you guys have spoken to a lot of municipalities already on this.
Yeah. I think there's some details, and I think probably, for me personally, the most surprising information was just how our community is aging, just how big that population is.
I think they confirmed some stuff for us, though, that we suspected, like the Category 4 and the Category 5, the upper AMI levels. You know, we thought that there was a demand there, and we thought that there was a gap between our highest category and where the market was, but we, you know, I don't think we had, we knew that for sure. And so they grabbed the data, they showed us the data. Yes, there's a gap there. Yes, our employment growth has increased in that 120 to 200% AMI. You know, that's what you should be looking at.
The other little tidbit to that is, while none of it is mind-blowing, to make code changes, you need to have some findings to justify them.
Is there?
Another thing I wonder, I find it frustrating that now really the only way we get employee housing is to approve a much larger development that includes some part of it. Have you come across any kind of economic data, and maybe sharing with other towns, that quantifies when a unit is built, or what a free market unit is built, how much that affects the community in terms of extra services needed or extra jobs, or, it's hard to get away from this feeling that it's this ever-spinning hamster wheel. Every time we build something, there's more ground to catch up on, because now all these additional services and jobs are needed.
Mm-hmm. That's generally how mitigation rates are calculated, with some findings on that. But there is some nuance to it for sure.
Somewhat to it?
Some nuance, yeah.
Are the other locations up and down the valley also doing these studies so that there could be some effort in collaborating on the source of the problem?
Yeah, so the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition is a regional
Yes.
group, and they did conduct a regional study. And so there is some movement in that general direction.
Does that region also include Pitkin?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anyone kind of like incentivizing more than the minimum? Like we have minimums of what, 20% of units, 25% of square footage. Is there a way to like cut fees and help these developers? Like say you go to 35% or 40%, we cut fees, we use deed restrict. We're gonna purchase help with purchase deed restrictions. Can we give them that money to deed restrict these units above a certain amount and incentivize private development to build more affordable housing?
Yeah.
Is anyone doing that?
Not in this valley, in part because the free market product is so valuable that there's not really a need to do that. It's more of a negotiation matter, and so I think we would get to what your goal is there with increasing the mitigation requirement. For an entity like the town of Basalt, where on this side of town we own the water as our franchise, it's not a huge profit-making franchise, and kind of having that, we're talking about improvements to that infrastructure. So it's not currently seen as a keen idea to waive tap fees when we really need that to maintain our franchise.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of like building fees or
Oh, sure.
things within more of the town. I mean, I guess tap fees are the town, but yes.
It could be on the table.
I mean, like Kyle was saying, at
Yeah.
some point you make the requirements so high,
Yeah.
the numbers don't work for anyone. So then nothing gets done.
The problem is the fees are such a small part. Like your building permit fees, your tap fees are 0.5%, 1% of the whole project. So even though you're like trying to give back, you've taken a lot away. It appears to have not heard anything yet, which is great. But
Whenever you ask a city manager or a town manager about that, they'll come back at you and say, well, what part of our fees are unfair? You know, because a lot of municipalities price their fees at sort of the cost of reviewing plus a little bit. So so that when you do that, then the municipality is spending money just to review a project because the fees just cover staff time.
I was just saying that could be a part of it, like with, on top of it, purchasing, to provide the developer with more cash flow,
Yeah.
to have more affordable housing. And maybe that's tied with deed restrictions.
It could be, and it could be something that we work out with, like Eagle County, for example, has some of these programs already in place, and they have a lot of things that we'll bring back and update you guys on so that we're not duplicating what's available to our residents that are in the Eagle County side, like down payment assistance, rental assistance. Town of Basalt is not doing that, but Eagle County can do that for people, and other things like that, so, yeah.
Such as Eagle County has that payment for ADU program, and it would be available to Basalt property owners, but we don't have much available property to be able to do ADUs on.
We've been going for a while. This is going to come back to us. I think it's a good conversation. I think we're going to have another crack at it, but just in the process of keeping this going, we're behind. Let's move on to the update on the Confluence Park intersection.
Yeah, let me please share my screen. Except I have to get out of this one, I'm sorry.
It's okay. While James is doing that, I know many of you know the history, but for the few of you who may not, Highway 82 used to be Two Rivers Road. So it's kind of a fun little thing. So the intersections
Two Rivers
Road used to be Highway 82.
used to be Highway 82. Thank you. And so the intersections that are existing here are vehicle-centric, pedestrians second. Over the years, the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee has been working on this Safe Streets to School plan, connecting the bridge near 7-Eleven to the intersection to the elementary school. And so hopefully many of you have seen the colorful crosswalks out there right now. There have been some temporary installations as part of the overall plan. And the temporary installations are these colorful plastic bollards that kind of bulb out the crosswalks. There's planters that define, don't get dizzy, that define the pedestrian access along Confluence Park and the entry there. And then there's that blue and white crosswalk from the bridge also connecting to the sidewalk behind 7-Eleven. So they're all sort of temporary installations just to better define and do some placemaking in that area. The intent and the plan is much more extensive than just that intersection in that area. Yeah, so there's just a nice aerial of the colorful sidewalks. Our student resource officer, who's out there in the morning helping students cross the street, said it has been a tremendous help just having that painted to indicate that you're in a pedestrian zone and to slow cars down. So that's been great. So we're kind of learning what's working, what can be adjusted and improved, and whatnot. And yeah, so here's some photos of the existing. It happened to be the day I was out there. Loved that we have the need apparently for a bike rack. We had some camps out there, and there were probably 15 bikes, which was super cool. But just kind of claiming this space back for park access. The final plan does include 2 parking spaces there, which will be designated, but it's really tricky for us to do with the temporary installation. So we're sort of trying this version out for now.
So I don't see any bike lanes on there. Do kids not ride bikes to school anymore?
Well, we can't make a bike lane in addition to the pedestrian travel paths that are there.
Painted bike lanes on the pavement. They can't do that?
Right now they would lead to nowhere. They just lead into the vehicle lanes.
The bikes are in vehicle lanes.
The bikes ride in the vehicle lanes.
Yeah.
But
That's like the most unsafe thing you could possibly do.
the permanent plan does include bike lanes all the way down Two Rivers Road,
Okay.
on both sides of the
Okay.
road.
All the way to the end.
What?
All the way to the end.
All the way there?
Really?
Yeah.
All the way to the end.
Precious. Just not on this.
Not on the temporary improvements.
But the plan is to reduce the size of the sidewalks and increase landscaping?
No, to increase the sidewalks at the intersections, so you have more time on the sidewalk and fewer steps in the vehicle lanes to get to the other sidewalk.
I'm looking at the green on the right side of that the diagram by the elementary school. And that green is currently sidewalk, and those are 2 spots for vehicle travel to make that right turn. So that looks like you are reducing the sidewalk and adding grass and
Actually, over here by the elementary school, you've kind of got that pull in that acts as 2 parking spaces now.
oh, okay.
So part of that area where you see the sidewalk is actually reducing
Is being
those
reduced.
parking
Okay.
spaces, so it's not actually reducing the sidewalk.
Little landscape pedestrian buffer there.
How long are these temporary improvements, the way they currently are flagged, intending to stay?
Throughout the rest of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to have another road project in this side of town this year.
Yeah.
So next year is the thought process on this?
Yeah, and potentially, we need to kind of just get this plan finalized and get the budget approved. Yeah.
Those ramps are in such bad shape too.
Yeah, it's a busy intersection.
It's a
too.
really busy intersection.
Really needed.
It's a busy intersection. The other kind of major improvement on this plan, you can see there's an island in the middle there, and it has a signalized flashing beacon. You guys may have had the same experience that we've had, where you've got kids that want to take the shortcut and dart across
Yep.
to get to 7-Eleven. So here's a safe passage here. Yeah.
And then adding a sidewalk along that entire development as well.
Yes, connecting to the sidewalk over there, as well as narrowing that ginormous driveway into 7-Eleven.
Yes.
We have had really encouraging conversations with the owner of the 7-Eleven, who is so far super supportive of this plan and wants to make some improvements to his property as well. So that's been really encouraging.
It's not attractive.
So that area is privately owned, or is that right-of-way work that would be paid for and developed by the town?
That's right-of-way work.
That's right-of-way work.
Yeah.
Is anything happening in the park?
No. No, it's a native park.
Actually, was that the back of Confluence Park, right below the bridge? Seems like there's a wetland that's formed. Was that intentional or just?
Back.
Where are you looking at here?
So,
Further downstream?
so right below the bridge, where they were doing the work earlier, and they were clearing out, and they were doing some of the work in the spring.
Oh,
It seems right now it's very wet. That's never been that wet before.
it's probably from the high rivers, the high
Okay.
water.
Because it's, to me, I think it's great naturally. It just seems like it's, I've never seen it wet before like that.
Yeah, the rivers were very high until just recently.
Yeah.
The tree clearing was for safety purposes,
Yeah.
yeah. Because they were,
So that's anything else on this?
no, I think that's generally it. We just kind of wanted to put it out there so everybody had an understanding of it. Council got a presentation as well. In case
So
you
where
had
do the bike
questions.
lanes end?
They go all the way to Fisherman's Park almost, where the Rio Grande connects and drops into town. And as a side note, work over near the Whitewater Park at that end down there is in Picken County. Picken County is working on finalizing some construction plans to finish that project as well. So their street improvements will meet in with this, but we don't have a schedule on their project right now. We've been trying to push it off to 2025 or later, so we'll see what happens.
that spot on Two Rivers Road as a cyclist where if you're heading west, where you have to cross and get onto the Rio Grande Trail is quite squirrely. I don't know what the answer is, but it's quite squirrely.
Good point. All right.
Thank you. Last thing on the agenda then is commissioner comments and staff updates.
I have a question. Can you explain to us what's being proposed across the street?
The sale versus the rental.
Yeah. Is it for, because I had a feeling that newspaper articles were kind of missing something. Are they proposing just to sell everything on an individual basis, or are they proposing only to sell it to employers?
They're proposing to sell the category units to employers.
The which units?
The category, the deed restricted units
Okay.
to employers. They're proposing to sell all of the units, to make them all so that all units have the ability to be sold.
So the ones that are not deed restricted would just be individual free market?
Correct.
Okay.
The thing about doing, however, that being said, the category units they're proposing would go to employers who would rent them to their employees.
Right.
And the town has a roofer on that?
No. I don't know what a roofer is.
Right of first refusal.
Oh, yes, we do. The for sale units could be sold or they could be rented. But if you don't condominiumize the building, you're restricted to only renting them.
And is there the ability to restrict that, the deed restricted units, that whole chain that would have to go to employer who would then rent to an employee? Is that something that can be
Yeah, the
required, or?
The category units, if they are sold to an employer, they have to rent them to an employee meeting the category requirements for income.
But it can be required that they be sold to an employee rather than just an individual qualifying for a deed restricted unit?
Yeah, I guess why impose the restriction of having to sell to an employer if
Yeah.
they're already restricted? Why not just make them for sale restricted units?
So one thing that's unique in Basalt is that we have these priorities of how units get rented out or sold. And so in their original approvals, this waterfall of occupants was already defined. So that waterfall of priorities doesn't change. What changes is who the landlord is who's renting the units to the occupants. Whether it is the developer maintaining ownership of the units and renting it to people in that priority list, or whether it's the employers renting to people in that priority list.
It's not coming back to us, right?
No.
So based on what I'm read, Tim and Andrew want to sell out, and they
Yeah.
want to sell out to the employers and preferred and condominiumize, and that's what they want to do. And I happen to agree with, at least the comments I read, I agree with Ryan Slack's comments from the council, but whatever.
Yeah, I saw a lot of unhappy comments about people not wanting their housing so directly tied to their employment in case you change jobs or get fired or whatever, so.
Yeah, I think because those priorities exist, it probably doesn't matter who owns the unit. It's always going to be offered to those priorities first. So I don't think that really changes based on who the landlord is. But it might.
And if the first one buys it, they're then taken off the list for the next sale, right? Couldn't the first person just buy everything?
Well, the town could buy everything. We would have a first right of purchase on those. We probably don't have the money.
You don't have
to
the
buy
money for
them.
that.
Say,
That's what I'm
does
saying.
town have the money to buy everything? That'd be
If
great.
the first person does, then the restrictions fall on the new owner?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
if they give it to their employee and they have no employee available, then they have to go back to the list.
Right,
Okay.
forever, no matter who
Doesn't matter,
is involved in the building.
Perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
But-
Right, but I don't think they're on the priority list.
But the priority,
I think it's all locals.
the
Right.
priority list of
Emergency
Fire
purchases.
district, school district,
Right, Skico's not on it. So,
further down as a county, community Partner, whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
A sheriff employee, you know, yeah.
But we're not getting that.
No.
It's a minor subdivision of units that are already approved, so it is a council review.
How'd the recycling event go?
The recycling event was very successful. I don't have any stats for that, but it went really well. Great attendance there. Maybe, I don't know, when I saw, did we talk about Bike to Work Day? We had Bike to Work Day. That was huge, very successful. We had our first River Jams event, which was really awesome and fun. Thanks for everyone for being at that. 5 bands, vendors, and all sorts of fun.
That was a cool event. We did it. Checked it out.
thanks. Yeah.
It's really well done.
We were excited. Wednesday night concerts are in full effect, one coming up this week. And every other Friday are free concerts in Willits at Triangle Park as well. So,
Is the lawsuit from Teberneo still out there about the parking spaces?
How's phase 2 going?
great. I encourage you all to go take a tour in front of Heirlooms and see the new brick layout and the width of the sidewalk. Super exciting. Gives you a flavor for where we're going.
I think it looks great.
I want to say it feels really good to walk my kids across the street safely. So thank you.
Are all the solar projects done and in and working from the bond?
I don't think that we're 100% complete, but I don't know off the top of my head. We're looking at getting some information kiosks put in the high school so that you know how much is being created and what the usage is in the school and some
I
just
can't
real
speak
data.
for the science teachers, but from the environmental club, we would love to use that data, so
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
it's on the list, yeah.
Kind of as a side note on that, the Albany pool, we have all the heat pumps working now. You know, it's been kind of a 2-year process to get them all working correctly, and but they're all firing this year, and so we should have some good data hopefully after this summer on kind of how they're making improvements on our energy use there, which is great.
If nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second from Bob, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is adjourned at 7:50.
Les, thank you.
Did you see the? I tried to get them to do school, right? The 3